Ionad Locha,
Sorry.
a heritage site, and very grandiosely, I'm calling it an adventure park. Now, the adventure park side of things is very, very limited this year because we found it difficult to get insurance to open stuff, and other activities were deemed unsafe. So this year we had very, very few activities, but we're hoping to expand that over the coming 3 years. So all the things we can do in Ionad Locha can broadly be divided into the heritage aspect, mainly built around this old house here, that had been inhabited up to the 70s by three unmarried siblings, who hadn't made any changes to it or any significant changes to it structurally since, I'd say, the early 1900s. So it's a beautifully preserved example of traditional rural life. We have a cailleach bed, there's a fire lit in there every day, and we do guided tours of it, telling the story of the inhabitants, one of whom was quite a significant weaver of Donegal tweed. We have a preserved shop, their shop, where they didn't sell sweets, but they sold their tweed, and they sold small items like tea and biscuits out of a tin. And then we do weaving demonstrations. We have 3 looms, one original loom belonging to the original weaver there, and 2 others as well. And we do spinning and carding demonstrations. And then also of significance, on the lake, we have a cranog that is a listed national monument. So there isn't much to see there at all around the cranog. ESB flooded the lake, so everything is almost submerged, and usually all you see is that stick that's sticking out the top. But when the lake is low, you see the man-made island. Activities then, the things you can do on the site is you can take a tour of the lake, and that it brings you out to the most spectacular view of Errigal and the Poison Glen. You can do things like bumper cars and nature trails. There's a pony trekking available at our stables, and you can do pedal boats as well. So that's all that was available this year. Normally there were more activities. We also have a playground for children. And then in the visitors centre, we have a cafe and a shop. So that essentially is what Ionad Locha is and provides to visitors. I'm just going to take you very briefly through the history of it. It's quite significant for the people of Dunlewy. It is a non-profit, community-owned and run social enterprise. It was opened in 92 by Mary Robinson and conceived of during the 80s, when it was seen that all the young people of the area had to leave the area to get a job. So they were losing their traditions, they were losing their way of life, they were losing their language. And this was, they wanted to do something to prevent this from happening. So they bought the Weaver's Cottage and worked at setting up the visitors centre. Very small at the start, but their aim was to provide employment opportunities for locals in their own native language, to develop and improve community services. So there wasn't anything to do in the area at the time. Protect existing ecology and the natural beauty of the area, and then to promote the Irish language and the culture. So these are the driving forces for having opened that centre. So they purchased the cottage and the lands, and then over the following years they expanded. They received huge support from local representatives. So Údarás na Gaeltachta was hugely instrumental in opening it. Fáilte Ireland helped. ESB, who owned the lake, also helped. And eventually it was opened in 1992. Now, the core mission of Ionad Locha is around employment. So it's to contribute to the enhancement of employment prospects within Dunlewy and the wider Gaeltacht region. So this has just been revised with our new strategic plan we're doing with DLDC, to include the wider Gaeltacht. Until we looked at it this year, it was just for Dunlewy, but we thought that maybe it was bigger than that. We are steadfast in our commitment to preserving and promoting the Irish language. So the Irish language is very, very central to what we do. It's always going to be it's our first language there, and we we want to encourage the natural speech of all our staff as much as possible. And then, as well as safeguarding the area's rich natural and cultural heritage for the benefit of future generations. This is built around a heritage site of an old house. It is not yet listed, but it's my aim to get that building listed and preserved. And we are also situated in a special area of conservation. So the area that includes Glenveigh and Errigal and all of that. So our land is part of that. And our primary objective is to create engaging, inclusive, and educational experiences for all our visitors. Tradition, community, hospitality, and authenticity are our core values. So this is the site. If you see up here that's the road in, and immediately you come in, you see the stables there. This is the car park that's enormous and can cater for tour buses, coach tours. So it's quite a large and complex area. Here you have the building itself. This is the heritage house. And down here you have all the play area. Here we have walking tours through the forest, and here is a walking tour or a nature trail alongside of the lake. So it is quite a large area that we occupy. All of this is commonage and won't be developed ever, but it's a lovely area of wilderness. At its height, Ionad Locha has welcomed 70,000 visitors in 1 year over its season. This year we did a lot less. We knew we couldn't handle it. I'll take you through the story of that in a minute. The cafe seats 120 people. The Culturland can seat 600 people, and standing we could have a lot more, but we haven't considered that yet. The boat that does a boat tour of the lake can run every half hour and can accommodate up to 50 people at a time. And the house tours also can run every half hour and can accommodate about 30 people at a time. So it is quite a large enterprise or an organization. There are lots of different aspects to it. We have the stables, we have the shop, we have the cafe, we have the play area, we have the heritage area, and we also have facilities for camper vans that unfortunately do need to be refurbished before we can start using them again, but they are there. So it is another aspect of the enterprise that we will be developing. So just a quick look at the timeline of the centre. During the 1980s, it was conceived of. They purchased the property and they sourced funding for establishing the enterprise. In 1992, it was officially opened by the president at the time, Mary Robinson. So it was a great coup and a huge thing for the area. I remember it myself, the event. Then from that point to about 2010, there was a steady expansion of the building, increasing the area of the shop, increasing the area of the restaurant, and increasing the scope of the centre. So where it had been built around the old house and doing tours of the old house, it expanded out into being very much a visitor's centre, a place to visit with your family where you could spend the day. So a playground was put in and all the activities started being added. In 2011, they added a massive theatre complex, which is hugely specced out. I was speaking to the person who installed the sound equipment, and he said that he had installed the same equipment in Wembley Stadium. So it is definitely, it's a very highly specced building. With huge capacity, and the ceilings are very high, so you're able to film from there and have proper lighting in there, which is an unusual thing. Usually hotel theatres, the ceilings are too low. And you can't find, there isn't the equivalent of this in the entire, I'd say the entire northwest, the entire northwest of the country. I think Sligo, they might have one that's almost as big. But otherwise, they're really, you have to go to Dublin for that kind of thing. So it's a huge asset to the area, and I think we should be using it more to draw events up here, and nobody knows about it. 2011 to 2019, there appeared to be some sort of management fatigue. They might have put everything they had into developing the cultural land. That took 5 years to accomplish. So things seem to have stagnated. Things weren't refurbished and things weren't upgraded. They were let to fall into a bit of decline, and I think that was reflected very much in the feedback that we were getting online. People were not impressed with the shabby nature of things. In 2020, then there was a little bit of a death knell almost when COVID hit. Like all service industry and tourism industry things, we were hit really hard. So there was a complete closure of things, that we weren't generating any revenue. Capital was dwindling throughout the entire year. And the same happened in 2021, sorry, where there was an unsuccessful opening. The losses continued. So all the money was pouring out and without making any revenue. And right at the start of 2022, in January, the manager stepped down. Now, this had been a managing director. So there was a group of directors. I think there were 6 directors. All of them but him had died at that stage. So he was the only person left. So when he stepped down, there was nobody left to continue for any kind of continuity for the place. So there was a complete break in management, a complete break in tradition, and just a loss of everything, all the knowledge about the place. A new committee of directors was appointed, 6 members, all from the Dunlewy area, all extremely skilled and with huge passion. And then from that point, January 2022 up to this point, they've been working at trying to get the place open. And in a way, this was a poisoned chalice. This was an impossible task, where it was such a complex building, really run down, and there was no money. So a really daunting thing to be facing into, but such an important asset, and so important not to let it go into private hands, and no longer be a social enterprise. So if they did find funding for a new manager, they found funding to mend the roof, they found funding to refurbish the playground, and eventually we did reopen in July the 19th. Halfway through the season, and we were not ready to open, but there was huge community support. So the challenges that we faced were really enormous this past 2 years. Without any kind of continuity of management, we just had all the problems of a startup, as well as all the problems of a well-established business. So the problems of the startup: we had no money, we had no staff, we had no experience. So nobody knew how this place was run. Nobody knew if it was even going to make any money, or how much money it would generate. So we really went in very blind. We didn't know what we didn't know. So we were testing things out as we were doing them. However, there was the really huge amount of passion in both the directors and then the staff that we did find. There seems to be a real passion to keep the place open and to keep it running. And then the worst part was that there were absolutely no operational systems. And because everybody was coming in very new, we didn't know how things worked. And it meant that after we opened, we had to deal with everything head on as it was coming at us, rather than being able to plan in advance. So this year was very much a learning year. We observed how it worked, and now this winter, during our closed period, we're working up new operational systems, so that we'll be well prepared for next year. The complexities that come from it being an established business are that the needs of this enterprise are so complex. It is a huge business with different strands, different demographics that we're focusing on. So the play area will be focused on families. The heritage side of things will be focused on tourists and tour buses. Then we also are supporting the Irish language colleges of the area. We have these stables. Again, that's a different strand of things. The theatre requires a complete separate, almost business approach. We need an events manager for that. It's been horribly underused, but it's just this vast, huge enterprise with very, very complex needs. And so far, we have one single manager to run it all, which has been very difficult. The accessibility and sustainability, at the time, this was built in the early 90s and the late 80s. These were not really in the forefront at the time. So we are very, very behind in terms of accessibility and sustainability. So we definitely need to update things there. The infrastructure is 30 years old and it is desperately in need of refurbishment. So we've been dealing with leaking roofs. I think is I dream of wake up at night dreaming of leaks pouring in. Um, we have aging equipment. So again, all the equipment in the kitchen, for example, was put in about 30 years ago. It was kept very clean, thank goodness, but it is definitely very old. And then on the positive side of things, the place is very well equipped. So we didn't have to invest in buying plates and cups and other things like that. So we had everything we needed. But then there's desperately the need to stay relevant. So in the tourism industry, any kind of stagnation is actually moving backwards. There, all the tourist offers in Ireland have become so sophisticated, and I think that a an organization that's been established 30 years ago really needs to try hard to stay more relevant and to keep relevant and to keep renewing things while still keeping the charm that it always has had. So looking at our achievements just over the past couple of years since the new committee started, there are lots of them, but I'm just going to pick out a few of the main ones. So the first four ones are ones that we achieved that we could not have opened without. So we managed to get emergency repairs on the roof to stop the leaks coming in the restaurant, in the kitchen, and in the craft shop. So without those, we wouldn't have been able to open. It wouldn't have been safe. We painted the outside of the building. The two pictures there, you have the before and the after. So the building was dingy and really not nice. It hadn't been painted in a good while. So we got and the building was so huge that most painters who came just walked away and didn't even give us a quotation. But we managed to find a local man who did and did a really good job. So the place looks beautiful now. We rewired the electrics and we installed a new fire safety system. So everything is safe, if not entirely renewed yet. We got a new playground as well. You see this sort of the swamp that was there when I arrived at the back of the building has changed into a modest playground, but we are expanding that now as we speak. And we launched our boat, the Grania Rose, which sounds very easy, but it was probably the most difficult task that I completed so far. We managed to open the doors on July the 19th. Definitely, I don't know if it was evident to the outside world, but this was an impossible task that I'm so proud of having managed. And we employed 41 people this year, which is a really significant amount of people, and particularly considering that we were at the bare bones of the amount of staff that we needed. So normally I'd say that this place would employ about 60 people during their open season, which lasts about 6 months normally. And then a huge coup for us, we enticed and harnessed RTE with our theatre, and we got them to do their national broadcast of Culture Night from our theatre. They were so impressed with the place, finding somewhere like that in somewhere so remote. And I think that this theatre could be something that we can draw people to the area. We can use to draw business and conferences to the area if we market it properly. So that's one of my goals. Visions and goals, really realistically, next year, we're really just looking to reopen our doors and do things properly. But we do have some visions beyond that. One really important one is to start up events again. So have concerts, big and small, workshops, community events, and then weekly events as well. We are focusing very much on energy. So trying to figure out, I'm sure most of you are focused on energy because the prices are so huge these days. trying to establish what kind of renewable energy sources we could harness, looking at energy efficient upgrades, and then water conservation. Sustainability is a huge one for us as well. So looking at the waste management and trying to figure out ways of reducing the amount that goes into landfill. Also looking at the use of poisons in the area and trying to figure out, can we maintain our landscape without using the poison? We're, as I said, focused on heritage, and that includes our natural heritage, which is really important to us. Looking at native wildflowers and trees, and then creating wilderness areas, and then educating people about the importance of these. One of the goals that I personally have is to restore the cottage using traditional techniques of lime plastering and handmade wooden windows, that will keep the house itself safe and make it last for generations to come. Then to create a centre for tweed making, and maybe a learning centre for Donegal tweed, to try and bring the tradition back up to North Donegal and into the Gaeltacht again, because right now South Donegal has claimed ownership of it. So I'd love to bring it back. We do have a tradition of it in the area. And then to focus on the accessibility, using the mandate, nothing for us without us. We're going to be inviting people with different groups of differently abled people to come in and assess our infrastructure and our tours and how they experience them. And then we want to increase the opening period. It's a very valuable local amenity. And because right now we had to close, we should have closed right at the end of August, because it just wasn't supporting itself after that point. So we have to figure out a way of generating enough revenue during the off periods when tourists aren't about. And then we want to increase footfall. Obviously, the more revenue we generate, the more that goes back into the community, either in terms of increased employment or putting on other events or staying open longer. Okay, you can take it. And then sustainable expansion in alignment with the core strategy. So I think in the past it had been expanded in a lot of different directions and almost fragmented the core of what we were. So we're trying to have a look at that and go back tightly again into what we are, who we are, and what we stand for. And I think that very much is going to be around the area of heritage. Now, the unique offerings that I think that we have are the Irish. So Irish language is hugely important. It's one of the things that we want to support and sustain, and give young people the chance to get a job in their native language. Our boat, the boat tour, is not entirely unique. I mean, there are ferries, sea ferries, and some sea tours around the islands, but the spectacular view that we have, the landscape that we're in, really is a unique offering. The theatre is very, very special. As I said before, it's the only thing of its kind in the larger area surrounding the whole Northwest. Our welcoming fire. So this seems to be the heart of the place. People keep mentioning it in all the reviews and feedback. The fact that we burn turf is slightly problematic, but we're doing it still, and we are thinking about whether that should be the case. But certainly, visitors do appreciate it. The landscape is stunning, and it's probably the biggest asset that we have. So we're currently reviewing how that is experienced as soon as you walk through the centre. Our beautifully preserved old house, and then our staff. So our staff are the people who are creating the visitor experience most of all, and I think that is what people are appreciating most. So Donegal is very good at hospitality, so we are keeping that going. So the funding sources, I'll just run through it really quickly. First of all, it's trading income. I'm really pleased that we broke even this year. We didn't make any money, but we were very glad that we didn't have any losses. So this is generated through admission, through sales in the gift shop, through the restaurant, through people buying membership, through events, and then other commercial activities like rental. From Leader, we got I think 90,000 to redo the playground. I think it's a 70% grant, so we had to supply 30,000 ourselves. The Community Investment Fund gave us money. Again, I think that was 130,000 to fund the roof repair, which is very, very, very necessary. Unfortunately, the roof is so large and complex and so bad that it will probably need about, we could do with another 300,000, I'd say, to actually do it properly. But for the moment, we've done emergency repairs and we were able to patch it up so that we could open. From Pobble, from Pobble's community service program, we received support for a manager and one administrative position. We have Údaras, from Údaras na Gaeltachta, we got a grant that helped with groundworks and creating a new patio. The minor tourism grant gave us money for nature trail. Fáilte Ireland gave us a strategic plan initiative, which turned out actually to be not a strategic plan, but a landscape plan, which was very useful, but not exactly what we needed when we were starting up the business again. Bord Iascrí Mara gave us a Blue Tourism grant for upgrades to the safety system on the boat. Fáilte Ireland, we got onto the Digital That Delivers program, which will deliver a new website. And then with DLDC, we are currently doing the strategic plan mentoring program. So this is developing a business-focused strategic plan that I wish we'd had last year, but it's so fantastic to be getting it now. So all of these funding sources enabled us to open our doors, and without these, we wouldn't have been able to. So we're really, really grateful, and it's very important work that they have been doing for us. So the feedback that we're getting from customers, we're currently reviewing all of it. It has been overwhelmingly positive, in spite of the fact that we were not ready to open our doors. Nothing really worked very well. Everything was a little bit of a shambles, but the community support was huge, and I think people were much more patient and tolerant of the things that didn't work than they should have been. So the top 10 things that they were picking up on were, first of all, delight at reopening. That was said over and over and over and over again, and this is mostly from locals. The fact that a local amenity has come back into play. The boat is a hugely popular thing that is always mentioned, and the staff, again, the welcome and the friendliness, all coming from the staff. That's mentioned again and again and again. Fun, I'm not sure if that's the fun of the people working there or that they had fun while they were there. And then there's a huge amount of nostalgia with people mentioning previous visits, them having been there as a child and coming back now with their own children, or them having brought their children and now coming back with their grandchildren. So definitely part of the history of people growing up here. And then the weaving demonstrations, surprisingly enough, this is a very popular thing. Children are writing about this, and they're saying that they love feeling the tweed, they love getting a turn at spinning. So it's them getting a very tactile experience. And I think that this is something that I want to develop a lot more, because I don't think children get a lot of exposure to this kind of thing. And then the storytelling, people love the story. We've got great storytellers. The tour guides have invented a lot of stories that aren't true, but they tell them very well. And then the pedal boat seems to be, well, they were the only thing we had this year that was down in the fun area. So that's Ionad Locha this year in a nutshell. So thank you very much for your patience, and happy Halloween.